tough day last night in the Middle East. We lost 3 brave souls in an attack on one of our bases.
Yes.
And I'd ask you for a moment of silence for all 3 of those fallen soldiers.
Jesus.
And we shall respond. God bless you all. Thank you for allowing me to be here. And I wish we didn't have to go. Thank you all so very, very much.
A very important escalatory step. It's in some ways, it's what we've been worrying about for the past several weeks and to some extent for the last couple of months, in that US casualties was always seen as a red line. US deaths in all of these attacks that we've seen on various US interests, US bases, minor injuries, people targeted who weren't actually US citizens. This is the tipping point. So 3 US soldiers' deaths is important. It's not necessarily a tipping point into uncontrolled escalation between the United States and Iran, but it's another very dangerous step because, as I say, the US will have to respond even more strongly than it's done to previous attacks. That means possibly killing some very, very senior Iraqi militia leaders, possibly some senior Iranians. So it seems that this attack was carried out by a group calling itself the Islamic Resistance in Iraq. That's not a real group. That's a name that's been used by various militias, Iranian-backed militias that tend to be Iraqi, but also operate in Syria. And they've been using that name during the Gaza conflict as they have stepped up drone attacks and missile attacks on US interests.
What I can definitely say is that the strikes that took place on US service members represent a fundamental change in the rules of engagement. This is the first time that we've seen fatalities of US service members, and that's absolutely not going to be something that this administration or the Pentagon takes lightly. That is going to prompt a response. Whether or not that's a tipping point to a much wider escalation will depend on, of course, the character of that response. Obviously, we've seen that the administration and to some extent also Iran have been slowly escalating, trying not to see all-out war, frankly. And as I said, this does represent a more significant escalation in this sort of tit for tat. The options right now could be more intense strikes on some of the Iranian militias that have been launching these attacks, particularly in Syria, but also in Iraq. There's also the option, and we've already seen that some, including members of Congress, have been calling for direct strikes on Iran. I don't anticipate that we will see the Pentagon go that far, because again, that would certainly augur more all-out conflict in a way that I don't believe that this administration wants. So again, options, we won't see them do nothing. That's been made very clear. What I think we can expect is a more, as I said, broad and intense strikes on some of these Iranian-backed militias that we haven't quite seen yet before. What scares me is that as long as the conflict continues to rage that the Israelis are waging in Gaza, we're going to see continued instability in the region, continued insecurity that places our American service members in jeopardy, that places millions and millions of innocent civilians who live in the region in jeopardy. It's placed our global commerce in jeopardy. So really, we don't know when Israel is going to eventually halt the conflict in Gaza, but I think until we see that, we are in a moment of true instability and insecurity, again, that jeopardizes the lives of many millions of people. This absolutely has implications for day-to-day lives of Americans. We've seen somewhat unprecedented mobilization around support for the Palestinian people. We've also seen, again, that some, including members of Congress, are calling for more all-out aggressive posturing with Iran, which will absolutely impact American lives. The Iranian aggression in the Red Sea has, again, increased the cost of shipping there. That's going to have impact on consumer prices. So certainly Americans are both feeling materially the effects of this conflict, as well as feeling emotionally the effects of this conflict. Well, Iran has taken advantage, frankly, of the current moment of conflict to do what Iran has been doing for many, many years, which is to disrupt, to target the US and partners in a variety of ways, mostly through the efforts of its proxy militias. Iran is not necessarily interested itself in engaging in war, and so it has a much more cost-effective way to do so, and politically effective way to do so, by using these proxy militias. So again, what Iran is doing is testing where that line is, how much it can get away with in targeting US interests, whether those are military interests or economic interests, and really testing the US in terms of its response. Well, Secretary Austin said that the response would come at a time and place of the US choosing. I don't think that they'll wait too long, particularly because if we know now that Iran is equipping its militias and essentially giving the green light to target American troops, that's not something that's going to go without a response for very long. But obviously it may be, a number of days or weeks, but I would anticipate that we see a significant response quite soon.
Hello. AME Church, I apologize. But Reverend Beeman, you brought it all back, Rev. I tell you what, the man can preach, can he? To the whole congregation, I'm genuinely honored to be here. I sincerely mean that. And